off in this game and you lost to a team that won 10 games last year in your own building. And somebody please explain to me two things. Number one, defensive guru? Stephanie White's a defensive guru? You gave up 107. A C note +7 at home.
73 total points from your star trio, a packed arena, national TV spotlight, opening night energy shaking the building, and the opponent, a Dallas Wings team that managed only 10 wins last season. Yet somehow Indiana still walked away with a loss. The Fever dropped their season opener to Dallas 107-104 in overtime, and that score alone does not fully capture how painful this game really was for Indiana fans. Because the hardest part to accept is this: Caitlin Clark was not the reason they lost. Kelsey Mitchell was not the problem. Aaliyah Boston did her job too. Indiana's three biggest stars delivered exactly what fans hoped to see in a marquee opener. They were sensational from start to finish. But all of that production was wasted after questionable decisions from head coach Stephanie White allowed Paige Buchers and the Wings to escape Gainbridge Fieldhouse with a statement overtime win. This was not simply a case of one roster overpowering another. Indiana got outcoached in critical moments, and that reality is impossible to ignore. Before breaking down everything that went wrong, it is important to recognize what actually went right, because the Fever's core players showed up ready for the moment. Kelsey Mitchell was electric. She exploded for 30 points and looked every bit like the superstar Indiana invested in with that massive $1.4 million Supermax contract. Mitchell shot 11 for 22 from the field and knocked down 6 of 7 free throws. Whenever the offense stalled or the tempo slowed, she became the engine keeping Indiana alive. After struggling during preseason play, she responded with an aggressive attacking performance that reminded everyone why she earned all WNBA first team honors last year. Dallas simply had no answer for her all night long. Then there was Aaliyah Boston, who may have played one of the most complete games of her Fever career. Boston finished with 23 points while shooting an outstanding 9 for 14 from the floor. Good for 64% efficiency. She also added 7 assists and controlled huge stretches of the game offensively. Her chemistry with Caitlin Clark in the pick and roll looked unstoppable at times. The mid-range jumper was falling consistently. She confidently stepped out to hit from beyond the arc, attacked defenders to draw fouls, and made smart reads whenever double teams came her way. This is the same Aaliyah Boston who recently signed a 4-year extension worth $6.3 million. And if opening night was any indication, she has the talent to enter the MVP conversation sooner rather than later. And of course, Caitlin Clark delivered a strong and memorable debut of her own. Clark finished with 20 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds while shooting 7 for 18 from the field. She also stayed perfect at the free throw line, going 4 for 4. There were several stretches where her elite passing ability completely carved up the Dallas defense. Her willingness to attack the basket instead of settling for jumpers showed real growth in her game, and she consistently created quality opportunities for teammates throughout the night. On top of that, Clark added another historic milestone to her already growing resume, continuing the trend of rewriting record books almost every time she steps on the floor.
The fastest point guard to do so. So the fastest point guard to ever reach 1,000 points. Also, she is the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 1,000 points, 250 rebounds, 250 assists. Caitlin Clark is generational. That's pretty badass. Fastest player ever to do 1,000, 250, and 250 plus.
Last night, Caitlin Clark added another historic achievement to her already incredible start in the WNBA. She officially became the 6th quickest player in league history to score 1,000 career points. But that is only part of the story. Clark also became the fastest point guard the WNBA has ever seen to hit that mark, and even more impressively, the fastest player ever to record 1,000 points, 250 rebounds, and 250 assists. That is not normal superstar production. That is the kind of pace that defines an entire generation of players. Now, was it a perfect shooting night for her? Not at all. Clark struggled from beyond the arc, finishing just 2 for 9 from 3-point range. The offseason adjustments she worked on with trainer Brandon Payne did not fully click in this game. Part of that can be explained by rust after missing the entire 2025 postseason, but Dallas also deserves credit for the defensive game plan they executed against her. The Wings made life difficult from the opening tip. They crowded her space, played aggressively, stayed attached to to her off the ball and forced her into uncomfortable, heavily contested shots. That physical style is exactly what teams around the league are going to keep trying against Clark all season long. But despite the shooting struggles, there is one number from the game that matters more than anything else. Caitlin Clark still finished with a positive plus-minus rating at +2. Even on a night when her shot was not consistently falling, Indiana still played better when she was on the floor. And when you combine Clark's performance with the production from Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, Indiana's big three totaled 73 points. That should be more than enough to win a home opener. So how did the Fever still lose this game? Because the real collapse did not come from the starters. It happened when the bench entered the equation, and that is the part almost nobody in the national media wants to discuss. Clips.
Kynes Allen, forget about it. Forget about it. I was like, are you serious? We did this? We signed this player? Not good. The big three, let's just be honest. When you score 20, 23, and 30, your big three just went off.
Sophie Cunningham logged over 25 minutes on the floor, and by the end of the night, she had only produced 3 points. That is simply not enough from a veteran player Indiana specifically brought in to add toughness, spacing, and intensity to this roster. She attempted just 2 shots the entire game, making one of them from beyond the arc, but outside of that single three-pointer, her offensive impact was almost non-existent. For a team relying on its role players to support the stars, Indiana needed far more from Cunningham in a game this important. Then there was Lexi Hull, who finally returned after dealing with a hamstring injury. Fans were excited to see one of Caitlin Clark's most reliable floor spacers back on the court, especially after Hull shot an impressive 47% from 3 last season. But the return never found a rhythm. In nearly 15 minutes of action, Hull finished scoreless, went 0 for 2 from the field, and contributed just 1 rebound and 1 assist. The missed preseason reps clearly showed. She looked out of sync offensively, and the rust affected her timing throughout the night. Indiana desperately needed her shooting presence, but it never materialized. Rookie Raven Johnson also struggled to make an impact in her regular season debut. She played just under 12 minutes and managed only 2 points while shooting 1 for 2 from the floor. More concerning was how little influence she had on either end of the court. Indiana drafted Johnson with hopes that she could become a defensive difference maker and reliable backcourt piece. But on opening night, she looked overwhelmed by the pace and pressure of the moment. Whatever confidence she built during preseason action disappeared once the regular season spotlight turned on. And then came one of the strangest decisions of the night involving Tyasha Harris. She played only 4.5 minutes, did not attempt a single shot, failed to score, and made virtually no impact before being pulled. For a veteran guard capable of stabilizing the offense, her limited usage raised serious questions about Indiana's rotation choices and overall game management.
What did we talk about this team? Depth, front office, depth, lack of length, depth. The second team is not good. Your bench, not very good.
Now put all of those numbers together for a second and really think about how bad this was. The Indiana Fever bench rotation of Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, Raven Johnson, and Tyasha Harris combined for just 5 total points. 5. In 56 combined minutes on the floor, those 4 players shot a combined 1 for 6 from the field. That is nearly a full game's worth of minutes, producing almost nothing offensively. That is why Indiana lost this opener. It was not because Caitlin Clark struggled from 3-point range. It was not because of Aaliyah Boston late in the game. The real issue was the complete collapse of the second unit, and Stephanie White never found an answer for it. For weeks, concerns about Indiana's lack of bench depth have been building, and on opening night, those concerns exploded in front of a national audience. To be fair, Dallas deserves credit for the way they approached this game. Head coach Chris Keclains had the Wings fully prepared for Indiana's offensive sets. Paige Buckers looked every bit like the #1 overall pick, controlling the pace and making winning plays throughout the night. RK Ogunbowale poured in 22 points and delivered in key moments. And when overtime arrived, Dallas executed with poise while Indiana unraveled. The Wings absolutely earned that victory, but the Fever still should have won this basketball game. Your top 3 scorers combined for 73 points. You had home court advantage. The crowd was fully behind you. The momentum was there, and somehow the game slipped away because Indiana could not get even basic production from its bench. Now, here is the coaching decision that has Fever fans furious. Shatori Walker-Kimbrough never touched the floor. Not 1 second. Coach's decision, and that makes absolutely no sense when you look at what she already showed during preseason. Against the New York Liberty, Walker-Kimbrough came off the bench and scored 18 points while finishing as a plus 12. She was clearly Indiana's most effective reserve scorer throughout preseason action. Yet on opening night, while Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell carried the entire offense by themselves, Stephanie White chose not to use the one bench player who had already proven she could generate instant scoring. That is not a minor oversight. That is a massive coaching failure. Lexi Hull was still trying to work her way back into rhythm after injury. Sophie Cunningham provided almost nothing offensively. Raven Johnson disappeared for long stretches. The answer sitting on the bench seemed obvious to everyone watching. Walker-Kimbrough had already demonstrated she could create offense immediately, and her preseason breakout against New York showed exactly the type of spark Indiana desperately needed in this game. Instead, she stayed planted on the bench while the Fever slowly lost control of a very winnable opener. Fans have every right to be frustrated by that decision, and there is another major question surrounding Stephanie White's rotations. Why did Tyasha Harris only play 4 minutes and 27 seconds? Indiana brought Harris in to stabilize the backcourt and provide dependable minutes whenever Caitlin Clark needed rest. But instead of leaning on the experienced veteran, White gave extended opportunities to rookie Raven Johnson, who struggled to impact the game and finished as a -3. If Harris was healthy enough to dress for the game, then why was she barely used while the second unit completely fell apart? The rotation choices simply did not line up with the roster Indiana had available. White kept Sophie Cunningham on the floor for heavy minutes despite the offensive struggles, barely used Harris, and completely ignored her most productive preseason scorer in Walker-Kimbrough. And to make matters even worse, the reputation of Stephanie White as some elite defensive mastermind also took a major hit in this game.
Up in this game now, didn't it? I'm supposed to love Stephanie White because she's this defensive wizard. I mean, Paige Beckers goes off on you. Ogunbowale, who just got back from China, dropped 22. You got beat at home.
Fans were promised that Stephanie White would come in and repair Indiana's defensive problems, especially on the perimeter. Instead, the Fever gave up 107 points on their own home floor to a team that won only 10 games a season ago. That is not defensive improvement. That is a complete breakdown. Paige Buchers and Arike Ogunbowale attacked Indiana's defense all night and seemed to get whatever they wanted offensively. There were stretches where Dallas sliced through the Fever defense with almost no resistance. Rotations were late, perimeter coverage collapsed repeatedly, and there was little presence protecting the rim when the Wings started building momentum. The most frustrating part was the lack of visible adjustments. Dallas kept exposing the same weaknesses possession after possession, and Indiana never seemed to respond with an effective counter. When your 3 stars combine for 73 points and you still lose because your defense allows 107, serious questions have to be asked. A performance like that does not match the reputation of a coach who is supposed to specialize in defense. But as disappointing as the coaching issues were, there was another moment during the third quarter that completely shifted the mood inside the arena. For a brief stretch, the entire basketball world seemed to freeze, because suddenly a much bigger concern than the final score entered the picture.
Your bench, not very good. Now, let's get over to this. Holly Rowe just said the Fever training staff appear to be doing something with Caitlin Clark's groin in the tunnel, but couldn't confirm it. Caitlin is now back on the bench with a heating pad around her lower back. This was in the third into the fourth quarter. Grant Young from SI Caitlin.
During the third quarter, concerns spread across the entire arena after ESPN sideline reporter Holly Rowe revealed that Indiana's medical staff appeared to be working on Caitlin Clark's groin area inside the tunnel. Then things became even more alarming. A short time later, Clark returned to the bench with a large heating pad strapped around her lower back, immediately raising questions about her physical condition. Soon after that, Sports Illustrated reporter Grant Afseth noted that Clark had gone back to the locker room to begin the fourth quarter. At that point, it was impossible not to worry that something serious might be developing. There has still been no official medical update, but Fever fans have every reason to feel uneasy after what happened last season. Supporters remember the constant day-to-day messaging, the uncertainty surrounding injuries, and the growing frustration over how the organization handled updates involving its biggest star. Because of that history, the anxiety around Clark's condition is only going to intensify. Was the groin issue already bothering her in the very first game of the season? Was the lower back discomfort connected to the physical punishment she absorbed all night long? Those are questions people are already asking, and despite all of that, Clark still battled through the pain and finished with 20 points while making history once again. That alone says a lot about her toughness and competitiveness. But Indiana also knows the reality here. This franchise cannot afford to have its centerpiece already dealing with physical issues in game 1 of the season. At the end of the day, Indiana's core players performed well enough to win. Kelsey Mitchell was outstanding. Aaliyah Boston controlled huge stretches of the game. Caitlin Clark delivered another historic performance despite the shooting struggles and injury concerns. The chemistry between the starters looked promising, and offensively, the top unit did enough to put the Fever in position to win. What failed them was everything else. The bench gave almost nothing, the defense could not get stops, and the coaching staff struggled badly with adjustments and rotations once the game tightened up late. Stephanie White is going to face serious criticism after this performance because Indiana lost in areas that fall directly under coaching responsibility. Now the Fever have very little time to regroup. The team must recover physically, monitor injuries closely, and prepare for Wednesday's matchup against the Atlanta Dream. And even that game is already surrounded by uncomfortable questions. Ticket prices on the resale market have reportedly dropped as low as $19, while large sections of the upper level remain unsold. There is already growing frustration among fans over the direction of the team and the coaching approach, and losing the home opener in overtime after surrendering 107 points only adds more pressure. Just one game into the 2026 season, the spotlight on Stephanie White and the Fever front office has become enormous. Every decision from this point forward is going to be heavily scrutinized.